As entrepreneurs, I'll tell you, we have the opportunity to live unbelievably great lives. But there's one thing that frustrates each and every one of us. It's losing a client. We hate losing clients. And when you see those clients leave, or sometimes even worse is when they stay, but they're not really using you and they're not getting that full value and they're not sharing their friends with you. What if you could convert your clients, your customers, through the value you deliver and the relationship you're bringing to become super fans? Would there be value there? I got to tell you, there is huge value if you and I can do that. Well, I was recently at a mastermind group over at Frank Kern, one of the top internet information marketers, and we were over at his home, and it was a small group of 6 entrepreneurs. And my next guest, he was a remarkable entrepreneur, and he's sharing with the whole group what he's doing. Matter of fact, at the end of the meeting, Frank just hired him. And the reason I just wanted to bring him online right away with you and to share his insights, because he has gone ahead and put the system together to help your clients become super clients, so they become marketing apostles, raving fans, and they want to share you not only with themselves, consume what you're doing, but share you with their friends. You don't want to miss this. I'm John Bowen. I'm co-founder of AES Nation, and we are all about accelerating success, and there's nothing better than doing it with super fans. Stay tuned.
Ordinary success? No way. You want amazing, remarkable, exceptional breakthroughs. Dig deep, think bold, drive hard, watch yourself soar beyond your dreams. AESNation.com.
Purdeep, I am so excited to have you here today and to share you with our audience. You are making a big difference in helping fellow entrepreneurs like myself, like Frank Kern and others, create super fans who buy more, spend more. They really refer like crazy. This is the dream of every entrepreneur. So thank you for making the time.
Oh, thank you. It's my pleasure.
Well, one of the things before we go too far, and I know you got a new book coming out, and I had the opportunity to read a galley of it, and it's going to be out by the time of this recording on Amazon. We'll go into that a little bit, but give me the backstory. I mean, how did you get so excited about creating super fans? I mean, how did you get to the point that you and I are hanging out at Frank's house and driving around in his Rolls Royces in San Diego and having lunch and creating all these grand schemes together?
Yeah, it's actually a great question, and it's been a journey for me, which has been I would say super exciting, especially over the last 6 months. So I come from the corporate world, and part of my role in the corporate world was to, help my organization at that time to convert our client base into super fans. And this was perfect for me because this was my passion for the last decade. And outside of what I was doing, I was a sales executive, I was a marketing executive, an operational executive, but the whole experience, customer experience, was my passion. And when I started to look at what the best organizations are doing, for example, Apple, the Disneys, the Netflixes, all the classic ones that you take a look at, I studied them thoroughly, and it all came back to one concept: was all of these companies are extremely excellent at converting their clients into super fans, and that's what makes a world of a difference. When you can convert your clients to super fans that buy more, the ones that are willing to pay a premium, that aren't as price conscious to go to a competitor, for example, if someone offers a better price offer, and they're also the ones that rave and refer, especially on social media these days. And the world has completely opened up for business owners and entrepreneurs to create super fans, because what used to take years in terms of spreading the word can it can only be days now or a couple of weeks for things to go viral. So there's huge opportunity out there. So that's where I started. And as I was in the corporate world doing this and having great success, my friends would ask me these questions, all my entrepreneurs. I would run into people in networking events and they would ask me questions and I would just give them hints and some tips. And as I went along, I started doing consulting on the side, and I would help business owners, not to a perspective, because I was in the corporate world, enough on my plate, until I got to a point where I said, wow, this is absolutely amazing. This is just a huge opportunity out there. And I want to help as many entrepreneurs and professionals as I can. So how can I do that? Which has led me to where I am now. And my first step is obviously creating this book where I've taken all the knowledge, the basic knowledge, the basic fundamentals, and compiled it into my book, Superfans.
No, and it's a great book, and I want to come back to that. But, let's go over this one thing, Purdeep. This is so important that, all of us as fellow entrepreneurs understand this. And it's one of those things that we all know and we all experience it from some of the great companies you're talking about. But I got to tell you, I also don't experience it a lot of time, too, from many other companies. And what a missed opportunity. So when you're talking about the one thing, in creating these super fans, I want to go through and kind of, this is something you and I have spent days on together, and we're not going to do it in a one podcast. But I mean, how do we flick that switch so that our clients become these super fans?
So John, when it comes to the one thing, this is something that really popped up at me, and it kind of hit me in an instant in terms of when we take a look at customer experience. The word experience is what we need to focus on, because that is the fundamental basic foundation of creating super fans. Every human being in this world wants to experience life. And that's what we are programmed to do. Everything that we buy, everything that we do, all our hobbies are all based on things that we want to experience. And so it just goes back to that basic premise that every one of our clients is a human being, and they want to experience life. And so for them doing business with us is an experience. So what are we doing to enhance that experience for them? And it's a simple example. I live actually just down the street from a bunch of orchards, and I grew up on an orchard myself, on a cherry orchard, and I grew up in the trees picking cherries since I was 9 years old. I'm telling you, I wasn't having fun. In 40-degree heat, picking cherries was a pain in the butt. But if you drive down the street here, you see people lined up in the orchards to spend twice as much for picking cherries. And it's so interesting. I was telling my wife the other day, I said, you know what, we should actually take the kids and pick cherries. So why would people pay twice as much, sitting in the middle of the heat, and go out there and get, bitten by bugs to pick these cherries? It's because they're trying to get an experience. So people will pay more for an experience than they will for a product or service. And that's the one thing that we need to remember as service providers or as professionals.
Well, one of the things I want to go back, and I'm going to say, because we've got a lot of Americans on here too, that 40 degrees, we're talking about Canada, so it can be colder, but 40 degrees is centigrade versus Fahrenheit, so it's a little over 100 degrees. So having grown up in a rural area and doing hay, we didn't do picking up bales of hay all day at 100 degrees with humidity. You get very clear on what's a good experience and what's not. And but this one thing, I think, is such a big deal that you're doing. And I want to take it back to some of the other kind of gurus of the client experience side, and I'm thinking Tom Peters, who's actually a friend, but he was really wow. You gotta wow people, and And I got to tell you, it's a little tiresome to try to wow everybody. And one of the things I loved when I was talking with you and with the book is you're saying, no, John, you don't need to wow. This is, we can do this from being really clear about what we're doing. And I want your help for our fellow entrepreneurs here, because I had the benefit of spending some days with you, how we do it. And I want us to go through, and there's so many ideas that you have, and you've done a great job putting it in the book, and we'll come to that and how people can get it. But I want to go to kind of you and I were talking off camera, the big 5 things that, somebody can get started on creating this super fan type process, because, just the value, when all of us have raving fans, super fans, marketing apostles. Okay, we don't have enough of them. And how do we create them so that they do buy more, they share word of mouth, all that stuff, refer like crazy. And what I love is just a reminder that you had is and they don't even think of your competitor. I mean, as a matter of fact, somebody brings up the competitor, they explain why you don't want to go there, even if you're a premium price over and above that. So the very first thing is number 1 was the end goal. And tell me what you mean by the end goal on creating these super fans.
Well, I have this conversation with all of my clients, and when I go into their organizations and I take a look at what they're doing, and I talk to their staff and I talk to their teams, I try to determine what is their end outcome that they're trying to do with their interactions with their clients. And if they can't all tell me the exact same thing, then we know that we have some work to do. And that single most important thing is to create superfans. That is your biggest end goal as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, or a professional. And everybody in your organization needs to be on the same page. It's kind of like, I think of it as a marriage. So when you're married, your biggest goal is to make sure that your spouse is happy, because if your spouse is happy, you're happy. And at the end of the day, if you're both happy, you have a great relationship. The same goes with clients. Your end goal needs to be to create superfans. And a lot of times I see this with businesses that are growing rapidly. They take their eye off the end goal. So their eye goes towards expansion or more profits. But at the end of the day, if you're not creating superfans while you're growing, then you're losing out on that opportunity, because you will see other companies start to pick off their customers or their clients and make them into their superfans. And we saw that a classic example was Netflix and Blockbuster. Netflix did that very strategically with Blockbuster's customers.
Yeah, no, it's such a powerful. I mean, I can still remember, going to Blockbuster and picking up movies, and then Netflix is about 35 minutes from my house where it started. It was a little tiny place in Los Gatos, California. Now it's still in Los Gatos, but it's huge, and at least their headquarters is. And that simple of listening to your customers and picking the right customers. And I want to come back to this end goal, because this is something you and I have talked about a lot. And it's really important, because it's so tempting as entrepreneurs. We want to grow and take on all these clients and serve them well. And we want to create super fans. But there's a big thing. If we don't focus on the end game and we're playing the long game, if you will, the end goal type thing, what we end up doing is we take in the wrong clients. And these wrong clients, we can't delight. We can't satisfy to the level of creating super fans. And that's where being thoughtful and knowing this end goal is so important, you've told me.
Yes, absolutely. I think the biggest challenge or the biggest factor for a successful entrepreneur or business owner is utilizing resources effectively. And that comes down to opportunity cost. So when you grow so rapidly and you have all of these clients that aren't your super fans and may not ever be your super fans just because they might not be the right fit, there's an opportunity cost there, because you're putting time, resources, money to service these clients, which you could be using more effectively to service the right fit who can become your super fans.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I found is when I have the super fans, or I mean, the people who I think can become super fans, what happens, which is pretty amazing, they're the right clients for our service. We're delivering value. And what they do is they have huge success. And that allows them to become super fans, but by consuming what we're doing and having success. And if you have the wrong clients that aren't in a position to consume or have that success, you just set yourself up for failure. The other thing that we all need to have this success is the right people. And when we think of right people, every business has a little different take. But when we start thinking of creating super fans, this is even more important than ever before.
Yes, yeah, it's probably one of the most important factors. So you've probably heard the term having an internal raving culture of employees or staff, and you absolutely need that in order to be able to create super fans. So when I'm talking to clients, we look at their internal structure first. We take a look at who they have on their teams to say, okay, are your staff, are your employees, are they your super fans? And because if they're not, you need to turn them into your super fans, because that experience is not going to relay onto your customers until they are. But the biggest factor for people to become, or for staff to become super fans, is having the right people. So recruiting and hiring is 80%, or effective recruiting and hiring is 80% of the game. If you can do those two things properly and effectively, you're 3/4 of the way there.
Well, and I think of this, and I think of how important, no matter how good the leader of an organization is, they're not going to be touching all the clients, or it's going to be a very small company. So we have all our teammates that are touching, and they have all these moments of truth. And how are they doing? And are they passionate about creating super fans? And if they're not, you got to give them, and you talk about this in your book, you got to give them the opportunity to do that, because you may be changing your direction. But if they're not up for it, I always call it releasing for new opportunities. And I don't mean that as a cruel thing, but you're not the right organization for them, and you want to let them find the right place. But this is the competition that's happening in today's world is just so huge. And the Blockbuster and Netflix is just a great example, but we can go on and on with so many examples, of Apple. I mean, whether you love Apple or not, again, it's out here close to my house. and when I was a financial advisor, I had many Apple employees that, just great, huge success. But when they weren't being success, I'll tell you, they lost their passion. And then Steve Jobs came back in. So this is so important. And this goes to number 3, which is lead by example. The CEO, really has to be, and the senior team has to be passionate about creating super fans.
Yeah, that's another important factor right there. You said it all. If at the end of the day, the culture of the organization is a reflection of the owner or the CEO, regardless of whether the CEO is only there a couple of times during the week or a couple of times during the month, that culture will be an ultimate reflection. So if you, and I say this in my book, if you're passionate about creating super fans, your teams will be passionate about it. And the most important thing for an entrepreneur is to know that your teams are doing the things that you're asking them to do when you're not around. And in order for them to do that, they need to know that you do those same things when they're not around. So you need to walk the talk. Absolutely.
Well, and if you've done these, I'm going to just do a quick review. You're clear on the end goal. You want to create super fans. You've got the right people on the bus, Jim Collins type thing. And then, you're leading by example. What happens is your team starts coming up with ideas that you as a leader, and I can tell you this from personal experience, great ideas on how to create those super fans. And it just becomes fun. And then number 4, if you've got all this together, 4 happens. Because number 4 is create processes that support this so that it's a repeatable experience. And, give us a little bit of kind of how important processes are and how do you actually get it in an organization? Because, a lot of times, Pradeep, I think of it as, so often, particularly the wows were the one-off, and which makes it so hard to do. We want to have a predictable, great world-class client experience that creates super fans.
Yeah, I think the number one factor when it comes to, you mentioned it before, it's not so much about the wow, it's about the consistency. So if you can deliver a consistent experience that meets and even exceeds your client's expectations, you have it down packed right there. And in order to have a consistent experience, you need to have processes. I'm going to say it the American way.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Well, we do have a bunch of Canadians too. So how do you say it the Canadian way?
Processes.
The rest of the world says it processes.
Yeah, so I'll entertain the Americans. So for the processes, they need to be effective and they also need to be written down. And this is the biggest challenge I see when I go into businesses, because I will say, okay, so what's the experience that you provide for your clients? And they'll say, well, this is what we do and this is how we do it. And I'll say, okay, great. Now show me on paper. And then they'll say, well, we don't have it on paper. It's all in here. We know what to do. And I will say the exact same thing. If it's not on paper, it's not a process. And if it's not a process, it's not an experience. So you have to have it on paper. And there's great tools. And I learned this from Toyota. I went to Japan and spent time at Toyota, Nissan, and Honda and figured out what their secret is. And you probably know the history of the Asian manufacturing, where they overtook the North American companies because of the efficiencies that they created. And it all came down to one thing, which was the processes that they created and how effective they were. And so I took that and infused that into creating an experience. And if you go to Disney is absolutely adamant. They will not create a new experience unless there's processes down that are nailed down, that are tried and tested. So that is the most fundamental thing. And Walt Disney himself said it, that processes are the engine for a great customer experience.
Well, and so many of us want to scale up our businesses, and there's no better way to scale up our business than to have the systems, the processes in place that support that experience. And if you can, convert, you're never going to have 100% super fans, but if you can have a pretty good percentage, and it doesn't need to even be that big, what should we aim? What I mean, we want to aim for everyone being a super fan, but maybe talk about just that little distinction from, being not having 100% super fans.
Yeah, and I think that's if you're determined to get 100%, you're going to be wasting a lot of time, because there is no way, not even Disney has 100% of their clients.
I've showed up at Disneyland and I've been disappointed.
Exactly. yeah, exactly. And I've been there a number of times, and there are a couple of times where I said, they could have done that better.
Yeah.
But it's wasted time and effort. So what you need to focus on is that group of people, and you need to do an analysis of your client base. And you need to determine, outside of creating super fans, what is your end goal? If it's growth, then you need to take a look at that client base that has the greatest potential for growth and include them into that super fan category and give them that experience. Now, if it's retention or referrals, the same thing. You need to break it down to say, okay, which category of your clients are referring the most and why are they referring? And then continue to give them that experience to get those referrals. So again, it's the effective utilization of resources. And I call it the 80-20 rule, but it's not necessarily 80-20. And I mentioned that in the book. You could have 60% of your members, or your clients, that provide 90% of your net profit. So you, as a business owner or professional, need to sit down and say, okay, do an analysis without any bias and say, okay, what are we looking to achieve outside of creating super fans, and what group is going to help us get there? And then let's hit them hard and let's get them or convert them into super fans.
No, this is just so important. And one part, I want to just touch on, and this is value transfer. I'm a big believer in capitalism, and the way we as entrepreneurs get to do exceptionally well is by doing well by others. How do you think of value, as Purdeep, as we go in, the creation of superfans?
Yeah, this is a great topic here. And value, so my background is also in innovation, and that's what I studied for years as well. Value comes down to what your client perceives of value, not what you as a service provider perceive of value. And in a lot of cases, they can be far apart. So your job is to determine what each one of your clients perceives of value. And it doesn't even necessarily have to do with anything to do with your product or service. It could be something completely different. But you need to figure out in terms of what you deliver and how you can incorporate that into what they perceive of value. So value comes in many different shapes and forms. It could be price, it could be time, it could be effort, ease of use, it could be durability, it could be attractiveness, it could be prestige. There's hundreds and hundreds of things that clients perceive of value. So I would recommend just listing as many as you can, and then as you talk to each one of your clients, just check off the ones that you think apply to them based on the conversation, based on their story, based on what they are telling you.
Well, what I find this so valuable, getting clear on the value, because what we want to, as most entrepreneurs today, unless you're Amazon, you want to compete on value. And Amazon is competing, on value, but also low cost, unbelievable operational efficiency, which most of us are never going to get to the extent that we can get really clear on value. And this is one of the reasons why I love testing new solutions with our clients, because they give you tremendous feedback, and particularly the super fans. And they'll be very good about telling you what's working and what's not. And we just released a new program recently, a new solution in our financial advisor coaching business. And the feedback within the first 2 months had us rebrand everything, reconvert to exactly their highest value. And it's really taking off from there. And it's this is where it's the opportunity for all of us. Now, I want to go to a different segment, and this is the book of the day. And unfortunately, because your book is so new, I don't have a copy of it, but I want you to hold up a copy of it, because you do have it, and give us a little bit of the this what's inside the book.
So yeah, here's my book, Superfans: How to Create Unwavering Customer Loyalty. And this is actually the first book off the press. And it's kind of funny, if you take a look, you see the white outline there. The printer's cutting machine actually didn't work, so they said, sorry, we can't cut it for you. But I thought it'd be a cool book, right? My very first book, the first screw up. But the book itself contains 33 goals, and there's other subsequent chapters as well. But these are simple, basic concepts that I've taken from the best organizations over the last decade of learning, testing, trying, and executing, and getting success, and including them in this book. Because one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs or professionals face is that question of doubt. Am I doing the right thing? Is what I'm doing making a difference? Is what I'm doing actually converting my clients into superfans? And I can tell you that if you're doing the stuff in this book, you are absolutely on the right track. And if you aren't, then I would start doing some of the stuff in the book. It's a simple read. They're basic principles, but they're things that the best organizations do and use.
Well, and I would encourage everyone to read this, and we'll come to how. But as I was reading it, and I was reading it last night because I just got the galley a little while ago, and in preparation for our conversation today, and I read the whole book, which I normally don't do. Normally read the first chapter, skim, read the last, and I'm there. And not only did I read it, but I took notes. And I really pride myself, our organization, that we hadn't been using the term superfans, but we very much working on creating superfans. And there were, for any of my fellow entrepreneurs, you're going, geez, I think I got this covered. Pick up the book, because there's 33 and they're all simple ideas, and there were a number of them that I go, you know what, I thought about doing that once, or I was doing that once, but I'm not doing it now. And it's not a hard thing. Matter of fact, I ran a couple by my wife. She's going, well, why aren't you doing that? And it's like, okay, and they're not expensive. They're not time consuming. It's, it's really having, the systems in place to make sure they happen. So it is great. Let me go to the next segment, which is resources. And how do our fellow entrepreneurs reach out to you? What's the right website, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, so you can always reach out to me via my website, which is purdeepsangha.com. So if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to help you. I love getting questions, because it makes me think, it makes me analyze, and it allows me to exercise my brain. So any questions you might have, you can always reach out to me. My email is actually coach@purdeepsangha.com.
Well, let me pull up the website. I'm going to put that up on screen here. And you have a blog. You got some free lessons that are available as well on there. And then at your domain, and we'll put this all in the show notes, aesnation.com, and everything will be there for you. Okay, and you were going to continue, and you said there's even more resources.
Yeah, John. So the other thing I've also done is, for the listeners here, although the book is not available, I have some boxes sitting here that my publisher has sent me. So I'm more than willing to give those out. First come, first serve. I probably have about 50 or so. I just ask that you cover the shipping and handling, which is $6.90, and I've created a special page for that. And the page is book.createsuperfans.com. So you can go on and actually get this book before it's actually released on Amazon.
Okay, so one more time, book.createsuperfans.com.
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure we put it in the show notes too. And lo and behold, I pull up the screen and it is there too. So all you have to do is go ahead and click on that, and we'll have that. What else should we, what would be, well, actually, let me do this, kind of a key takeaways here, because I've got so many that are so important. And, I look at, I'm going to go through the 5. And as I was reading the book and sitting in meetings with you, Purdeep, it became very clear to me that I can do a little fine tuning on what we do. And I really think we do a great job. We've got a great culture, great team, and some great clients. But being really clear on the end goal of what we're looking to do, and that's create super fans. I mean, why would you not want that? If you're going to be a business, have some fun, work with people that you're passionate in serving and creating value, and you get to do well by doing it. It's in your enlightened self-interest. Second, right people, is make sure not only do you have the right people, but you help them be aligned to this culture, because it's just so critical and it's so easy to forget. Third is lead by example. That you recognize that you're on stage as CEO all the time. And this is just, you have to lead by example. And we get so many opportunities to do that. And then whether it's process or process, what you want to do is you want to put the systems in place so that you can have this consistent experience over and over again. And, if you leave it for chance, it's not going to happen. And lastly, the value, to make sure that the marketplace is telling you the value. As Purdeep talked about, there can be differences between different people on what the value is, but be clear on what you're providing so that you can communicate it, find the right fans, create super fans, and create some tremendous success. Purdeep, I want to thank you for taking the time today, spending with our group, and really doing some phenomenal work. I'm going to encourage everyone to go out, to aesnation.com. You'll have the show links for everything. Pick up Purdeep's book. Some of us, like Frank and myself, working with Purdeep, if you're really serious about it, reach through Coach at his domain, and look out. Your clients, your future clients are counting on you. Don't let them down. We wish you the best of success.
Thanks, Sean. Take care, everybody.
Exceptional, remarkable breakthroughs. aesnation.com